Due to mature subject matter, viewer discretion is advised.
Some inmates just like to push the limits.
I've been that guy who starts the problem and makes them call for backup.
What are you gonna do? Put me in the hall? I'm already in the hall.
Here, if you don't stay on top of things, you're going to get hurt.
You never let your guard down, ever. You get it from 0 to 100 quick.
At the Hillsborough County Jail, the officers can't ever forget that their lives are on the line.
Stop pulling away from me.
Over 1,300 inmates are brought into Hillsborough County Jail every week.
Place your hands on the counter, back your feet, and spread your feet apart.
Central booking. The first point of contact in the often violent face-off between deputies and inmates.
Homicidal?
Many are angry and out of control, drunk or high, and ready to fight. There were over 24 attacks on officers at Hillsborough last year.
Come sit over here. Sir, you need to sit over here. Listen to my instructions.
Nobody knows that better than Sergeant Onan, a 17-year veteran.
Everybody's coming in off the street intoxicated and or with drugs or weapons. They do not want to be here. They're aggravated and they want to retaliate. I would be lying if I said that I've never been scared. I have been, but I think that I try not to ever let them see that.
Sergeant Onan is committed to public service, despite the risks. She has been assaulted repeatedly on the job.
I have had fracture on my nose. I was slammed headfirst into a steel vestibule door. He lost his pants. A corneal abrasion from getting punched in the face. Bruises head to toe, knee injury, ankle injury. Yeah, this way, sit down.
Tonight, an inmate arrested in an assault decides to act out.
Siéntate ahí, tranquilo, por favor. Por favor, siéntate ahí, tranquilo. We're going to the holding cell.
He is placed in a holding cell until he cools off.
Kneel down.
The inmate must be checked closely for contraband, for drugs and weapons.
Last week, one of my intake deputies found a taser disguised as a cell phone. That could have caused some damage. Put your hand on your head. Do not move it from your head until we exit the cell. Keep your hand on your head. Don't move. Stay on the ground until we exit the cell. Do not move from the ground.
Onan carries only one weapon.
I am armed with taser. I've used it only once.
Yeah, you can move.
Sergeant Onan knows all too well what happens when an inmate becomes violent. One night, she came very close to losing her fingers.
It was a combative female, very small girl, about 100 pounds. And as I opened the holding cell door, two of my deputies were holding on to her, and she was restrained. And when I grabbed it, that's at the same exact moment when she kicked it. And it trapped my hand in between the door and the door frame. And it crushed 3 of my fingers. I was wearing Kevlar gloves, so when I keyed the door, I had my gloves on. So my fingers were saved, but I've had several surgeries on my hand. So she got a 5-year sentence in prison for that. You know, I still don't have full range of movement, and every morning when I wake up, I remember Melissa.
22-year-old inmate Chris Trott has a reputation as a difficult inmate ever since he was a juvenile in this jail.
It started as an authority thing. I kind of didn't like a lot of deputies. I used to be that person who didn't care. It was just like, I'm going to do whatever I want, and they're not going to do anything to me. What can they possibly do? Send me to lockdown, and I'll get out in 30 days. I've been that guy who starts the problem and makes them call for backup.
Trott is at Hillsborough for violating probation on an armed grand theft auto conviction. He faces anywhere from several years to life behind bars, depending on the judge.
Now I'm in here fighting for my life, and I realize that I should have stopped a long time ago.
Trott knows this jail well. He's been in and out of it since he was only a teenager.
My first arrest was for grand theft motor vehicle when I was 14 years old. I'm now 22 years old, so I've been doing this for 8 years now. altogether.
First Trot seems personable starting off, but he tries to manipulate the system to get anything possible.
It must be my face. I got an award-winning face.
According to Deputy Johnson, Trot has long had trouble with contraband, from illegal food to drugs.
If you look at what he actually does, what he actually has in possession, it's not that big of a deal, but he manipulates the system and causes more problems than most other inmates do.
Hello?
Hey, Mama.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
He says for the first time he's trying to walk the straight and narrow for his father, mother, and sister, as much as himself.
I'm tired of letting them down. I keep letting them down, and eventually they're going to give up on me, and I don't want them to give up.
He also wants to stay out of lockdown, what he calls the box.
I'm getting tired of going to the box. I've only been to the box one time since I've been here right now, but in the past I did 6 months in the box, 30 days in the box, 45 days in the box, 60 days in the box, and the box gets old quick. Every day I lay in my room and I think about it, I'm like, it's time to stop. I mean, you gotta stop sometime. It's time to grow up.
Trot will be seen as a problem until he can prove that he's turned himself around. Unfortunately, he still likes to break the rules. Hillsborough is a sprawling operation with 2 separate facilities down the road from each other and over 4,000 inmates.
Gentlemen, it's chow time.
Many of the pods here contain up to 72 inmates, and usually only one officer who sits at a desk inside the unit, unprotected by bars or doors. It's called direct supervision, according to Intel Officer Master Deputy Gray.
In direct supervision, we are able to view everything in that pod, be it the doors, the housing, the whole 9 yards.
Down the line up, single file, one behind the other.
The philosophy behind it is we have our fingers on the pulse of that pod. We know everything that's going on.
What? 70? Where'd you get that? Is that your lottery numbers or what?
And while it works well most of the time, it also makes the deputy more vulnerable to assault.
Ladies, close cell 2 over, please, so I can see the corner over there.
Deputy Garcia, a 5-year veteran, is working today in the Women's Direct Supervision Pod, in charge of 62 inmates out of their cells for most of the day.
It's all about the control and the safety of everybody involved, and as long as you maintain that, you'll be fine. It's a yes, ma'am, and I suggest you come downstairs right now. When you are done with your shower, then you go straight to that cell and you make that bed the way you know you're supposed to.
According to Garcia, it's all about respect on both sides.
Here's all. Do we need a trip to the holding cell, ma'am? It's a place you haven't been in a while? Okay. That goes right along with having to create a relationship with these inmates in this pod. You have to build a level of respect with them so that you can gain the respect from them.
It doesn't always work. Right now, Garcia needs to deal with a disruptive young inmate who has been placed in a holding cell.
She came out of 1 Alpha this afternoon, very disruptive, would not go to her cell when she was ordered to. She did not want to be in the cell with the inmate that was housing with her. We can't just submit to the idea that she just wants her own cell or that she gets to pick the inmate that she wants to bunk with. That's not an option.
I'm not going in the cell with this lady, man. I can't stand her. Why it has to be like so difficult, I don't know.
You're making it difficult.
I can't stand her.
You're making it
She snores and she sings.
You don't get to pick your roommates. This is jail. It doesn't work that way. You're gonna sleep where you're told to sleep.
I'm not sleeping.
You don't get to pick your place. You don't get to pick your bed. You don't get to pick your roommates.
I'm not sleeping in there with her.
So we go through the measures that we have to take to see if she at this point will listen to what the deputy's orders are.
Don't be foolish now.
I'm not going in there.
Get up. Get up.
Get up.
Get up. Get up. Get you up. Now we take them back. Three cups again.
Got just a moment.
Why are you being foolish?
I would not necessarily say that she was giving us a problem where we had to use any type of force. Handcuffing her was enough.
You're making this way harder than it has to be.
Because I don't want to go in there? Is it that serious?
It is that serious when there's nowhere else to put you, so you want to continue to make this complicated.
That's all it is, but I don't want to be in there with her.
You don't get to decide that. You don't get to pick.
The inmate will now be put in the hole, solitary confinement, and lose her privileges.
everything would be taken from her. No phone calls, only outside rec for an hour a day, no canteen. At least for 2 weeks, will give her a really good idea of that maybe not doing what the deputy says isn't the way to go.
Deputies even faced the threat of lethal violence from outside. Just a few weeks earlier, Deputy Garcia was in charge of a male lockdown pod, which contained an accused double cop killer named Dante Morris.
We're currently housing Dante Morris, a very high-profile inmate.
Dante Morris is charged with gunning down 2 police officers who stopped him for a routine traffic violation. A few weeks after Morris's arrest, Garcia received an outside call at the jail from what appeared to be an insurance company. It wasn't.
About 12:50 Thursday afternoon, I received a threatening phone call that came through the jail. They stated that it was a business call. I repeatedly asked who I was speaking with.
The caller said he was a friend of Dante Morris.
He stated I would know exactly who he was when he killed me.
The jail went on high alert, and Garcia was carefully monitored by undercover officers outside.
We at that time determined that round-the-clock surveillance and security of my home, me and my family, was necessary.
There have been no additional incidents so far.
If you thought about it for too long, it could probably get to you. It doesn't, for me. I get more angry at the threat than I do fearful. I feel like I have a lot of support working for the sheriff's office.
Garcia refuses to let the threat stop her, but threats can quickly turn to violence. Hillsborough County Jail takes every precaution to keep their deputies and inmates safe. Sometimes inmates explode with rage and violence. Deputy Garcia has witnessed it close up. She was at the jail several months earlier when a veteran officer, Deputy Moon, was attacked in the mental health pod.
Deputy Moon was a fantastic deputy. Being a veteran deputy, maintained his pod very well. The inmate definitely was in crisis. He had received some information, I believe, coming back from court, and it was time to lock down for lunch. And he took every opportunity that he could to lash out at Deputy Moon.
Deputy Moon was at the desk. He didn't see the inmate come around the side until it was too late. He was trapped in his chair.
The chair was extremely difficult to get out of. It was on wheels.
Deputy Moon was on the verge of being choked to death, according to Deputy Gray.
The inmate was behind him, was able to literally put him in a chokehold that had Deputy Moon probably in the last seconds of his life choking the life out of him. He had that kind of grip.
It was Deputy Moon's trustees actually came to his aid.
The inmates knocked the attacker and Deputy Moon to the ground and pried his arms off the officer's throat. Another inmate called for help.
Fortunately, some of these guys had been back and forth to jail a few times and had a definite good rapport with Deputy Moon.
It was Deputy Moon's commitment to the inmates that saved his life.
The other inmates were able to subdue the suspect and get him out of the pod. But if it wasn't for those 4 inmates, Deputy Moon wouldn't have been with us today. And the reason they did that was the respect that they had for him. Without that respect, they might have not ever intervened.
Deputy Moon survived the attack with minor injuries, though he retired not long after. As one of the 3 intel officers, Master Deputy Gray is responsible for preventing violence against deputies and inmates.
The biggest part of our job is the safety and security of our inmates and our deputies. And if that's stopping contraband coming in, if it's weapons, if we could save a life, that's our job.
In just the last few weeks, both weapons and drugs have been found. There are gaps in security which Gray needs to close.
Contraband and shakedowns and constant monitoring of contraband in our facility is 24/7, 365 days a year. That's something we deal with daily.
A variety of deadly homemade weapons have been confiscated from inmates.
This was found, and it looks like a normal book, but the officer was diligent enough to go through it, and what he found was it had been carved out page by page. And what it was concealing was a toothbrush fastened with 2 razor blades, one on each side, A thread was used probably out of one of the bed sheets, and it was affixed to the toothbrush. All of a sudden, you got an easy cutting instrument for cutting a deputy or another inmate. They're very intelligent. They've got nothing but time on their hands. You know, when we do 12 hours, they do 24. It's a constant battle.
One inmate just came from state prison, where he's doing hard time for murder. 25-year-old Chadwick Thomas spent 4 years at Hillsborough Jail awaiting trial on the murder charge. He pleaded no contest and got sent to the pen for 25 years.
I spent 5.5 years waiting to go to trial and fighting and process of going to court and back to court. And I pleaded guilty and no contest and accepted a plea of 25 years.
In state prison, Thomas met guys who would never see freedom again.
Going to prison, your first thoughts is how you can get out. The best way, how you can find your way to get yourself out of it. Because everybody, it's some people with 3 and 4 life sentences there, they ain't never leaving. And I got 25 years, I got a day, but it's a long day, but I got a day. It's some people that don't have days. So I thank God I got a day.
Once inside, Thomas realized 25 years in the pen is a long time. He's come back to appeal his conviction.
This ain't what it is. I'm too young for to be locked up all my life.
Thomas is glad to be away from state prison for a few weeks.
You know, you at a place where it's people who really did their crime or really killed somebody, so you're not always comfortable. You're comfortable at a certain extent. All right, I'm all right, but I know that I'm in a place where it's like what they say, vultures. You know what I'm saying? You're surrounded by vultures, scavenging.
Unlike his earlier time at Hillsborough, Thomas will be locked down by himself all day, every day, except for 3 hours a week, since now he's a convicted murderer.
Chad was in isolation. He's here for first-degree murder. Obviously, if we're not careful with him and he doesn't think things are going to go well in court for him and he sees the opportunity to escape, then he can do that. But he won't do it on our watch.
It's not what Thomas expected. For her own safety and theirs, Deputy Garcia tries to stay attuned to the shifting moods of the prisoners. One of her inmates, Amber Tackett, has gotten some bad news. Tackett, a drug user convicted of trafficking, has done 8 months at Hillsborough. She just completed a mandatory 3-month drug program.
Because the charges were drug-related, they ordered me to take a substance abuse program, which is a 3-month program here. It's very effective. It's scary, but I've got a plan, thank God for that. So I'm gonna try everything that I can to stay out of here. That was the last thing I expected to hear.
She's ready to go home and turn her life around. But there's a problem. She's wanted in Tennessee for violation of probation. She was hoping that her time at Hillsborough would count.
Well, I'd have 8 months in here, and then I think I had a couple months in up there, so I was hoping maybe that time would be credited, but I was facing going to prison for a number of years on the violation in Tennessee. So I didn't know what was going on. I was just hoping for the best.
Now, Tackett may be looking at years in state prison.
We found out that there was a hold for Tennessee. So her class graduated, her class got to go home, they got to be released, and she stayed.
It sucks getting to watch everybody else walk out the door and knowing. And then today I was just like wondering, I didn't know how long I was gonna have to sit here, how long I would be waiting for them to come and get me.
Tackett has turned to Deputy Garcia to help her find out what's going on.
She asked me the day if I would call inmate records and see how things were going. She was just supposed to call me and review the information in the file so that I could pass on the information to the inmate. Some information as to how long extradition takes and if they had heard from Tennessee. Yes. Thank you.
Very soon, Tackett will know if she's going to prison in Tennessee and for how long. At Hillsborough, central booking is the front line in the fight against disruptive and violent inmates. Intake is the main source for drugs and weapons that later surface in the jail. Sergeant Onan and her team carefully search every inmate, then book them whether they like it or not.
Where you going? Where you going? Listen to me. You walk straight ahead to where those chairs are at. Stop the attitude here and now.
You just have to be open to experiencing something new every night. It's never the same thing. Just keep on your toes and be vigilant, and always expect something to go bad so that you're prepared. You're gonna hurt yourself. Don't keep doing that. You're gonna hurt yourself. If they're under the influence of drugs and alcohol, I have seen them kick the glass out of the holding cells. Is that open? Yes.
Tonight, police bring in a seriously angry inmate who's been busted on an assault charge. She is out of control from the start. Onan and her officers move her into a holding cell and take her to the floor. Sergeant Onan removes her jewelry and any other potentially harmful items.
You know what? Stop, sir. Do not pull away from me. Do not pull away from me. I said, ask me to stop. Come on back.
Keep your hand there until you get out of the cell.
I just want to get all
keep your hand there.
Onan quietly points her taser, just in case.
Do not move from there. Get into the cell.
Its red dot is visible on the inmate's shirt. The inmate will be processed once she sobers up.
Another happy customer.
Sergeant Onan is just glad a violent confrontation was avoided. One inmate at Hillsborough is so unhappy that he's turned the violence against himself. Inmate Chadwick Thomas is at Hillsborough to appeal a 25-year sentence for murder. But he didn't expect to be locked down in an isolation the whole time. In fact, Thomas hates to be in solitary confinement.
In confinement, you see I'm locked up 23 hours a day in prison. It's open. I can just go into and from the backyard to the canteen. It's better than being locked up in a room all day.
It got so bad that Thomas tried to hang himself the night before.
I told him I wanted to kill myself because I didn't like it. I didn't get a shower, no rest, anything, so I stood in the room like 3 days. I've been asking for toothbrush, toothpaste, so I couldn't get none of that. It's just I couldn't take it no more. I couldn't do my time like that. I got a sheet that hung it from the sprinkler in the room. And stood on the sink and waited till the deputy came.
Thomas was put on a 24-hour suicide watch in a separate unit.
Just a deputy sits in front of your door every day, all day, until you get off of it. And just in your room with somebody watching you all day. I can just believe they're not there.
Still locked down, Thomas hopes he'll get better treatment in this unit. But deputies will keep watch, just in case he tries to hurt himself again. Inmate Chris Trott insists he wants to play by the rules, but he seems unable to stop himself from collecting contraband.
This is like my bed, all right? Most people have a black wool blanket, but I kind of got this cotton blanket because I've been here so long. It's usually prescribed by medical, but again, I beat the system and got one from somebody that was leaving.
He has a history of harboring more serious contraband, like cigarettes and marijuana. For Trott, the trick is hiding it.
Your pillow's always a good hiding spot because they don't really check your pillow. Inside of your mat, see, I got all these extra sheets too. That's a lot of contraband. You can cut your mat open somehow and stuff inside of your mat. And just, I mean, this is a brand new mat, so I don't really want to cut it because then I'll lose all the air out of it. Inside seams of books, you can hide stuff in. Stick your cigarettes in there, or your weed, whatever you got, you can hide in there. In your clothes, you pull this thread out right here, and this whole section opens up. See? And now I can stick, let's say if I had a lighter, I can hide it right there. If I had a little cigarette or a little bag of weed or pills or anything, I can stick it right there. And then a deputy, most deputies don't grab that spot right there because, you know, that's where genitals are at, so they leave you alone. But that's one of the best places to hide everything, is right there.
Trott says he stopped smoking cigarettes and pot. He doesn't want to compromise his case. He could be put away for life if the judge doesn't like what he sees.
I'm facing all this time. If the judge wanted to give me a chance and he looked at my screen and seen that I got caught smoking pot in here, he'd probably be kind of upset about that or weary to give me another chance. So that's kind of why I'm trying to stay on my best behavior now, and I haven't been smoking pot anymore or cigarettes or anything for that matter. I'm just trying to lay low.
But Trott can't bring himself to give up contraband altogether. For Deputy Gray, contraband is a matter of life and death. It represents a constant threat to the deputies, so Gray and the jail are stepping up their shakedowns.
The array of contraband that can be used for weapons is only limited to your imagination, or the inmate's imagination. You just don't take a day off of looking for contraband.
Saturday morning, deputies have found contraband in one of the nearby men's pods. It's only tobacco, but if tobacco can get in, so can marijuana, pills, and weapons. Now they're going to go back in force and turn it upside down, Garcia among them.
We're doing a shakedown in 1 Delta. We brought in a canine dog. It's a good show of force.
Everybody out, let's go.
You're on your bum, you can't get up. Get so long.
There's definitely something going on in the pod. This may help us determine exactly what.
To the rec yard, guys. To the rec yard. Hey.
All the inmates are first moved into the rec yard. With the help of the search dog, Garcia and the other deputies give the cells a thorough going over.
The dog alerted to the desk, so we want to just kind of tear this cell apart.
The shakedown turns up tobacco, but no other drugs and no weapons.
27 to 31.
The inmates are returned in small groups to their cells.
32, 33.
But even with deputies everywhere, there's a threat coming, right at Garcia. As Garcia brings the remaining prisoners out of the yard, one of the inmates makes a remark about the accused double cop killer in the jail, Dante Morris. The deputies consider it a threat. There might be a direct link to Garcia's earlier death threat, so he'll be taken to a holding cell pending investigation. Garcia and Sergeant Vasallo briefed the intel officer.
Tell him what you just told me.
I'm standing out there. I'm the only one. He waited until I was the only deputy standing there, and he decided to tell the guy that was sitting next to him that he was Dante Morris.
But he waited until she was in earshot.
He goes, ma'am, I'm not talking to you. I was talking to my friend. And I said, really? I said, if you didn't want me to hear it, you would have never said it.
Garcia checks out the inmate's arrest record.
Trafficking, trespassing on property, restriction and opposing an officer at 24.
He made an inappropriate comment in reference to an incident that happened recently in the jail that is probably going to require some further investigation.
The incident reminds Garcia of the risks she and all the deputies are facing every day.
You have to be constantly in control of the situation at hand. So you never let your guard down, ever.
You got your cuffs, Trimley.
You get it from 0 to 100 quick.
Hillsborough County Jail. Deputy Gray thinks it's time to do a shakedown of the whole facility to stop contraband.
It's imperative as far as contraband that we find everything that comes in this jail. We learn every way that they possibly can get the contraband in the jail. And if we're missing something, it's imperative that we fix it permanently. And there's no choice there.
Never far from Gray's mind is the murder plot he uncovered less than 18 months ago against officers in a juvenile pod.
This is 2 Delta, the actual pod where the juvenile deputies and my partner and I discovered a murder plot that was about to take place. We noticed some changing in behavior in the pod. They were starting to what we call click up. They were grouping up. We took a couple inmates out. We separated them. So they weren't able to talk and collaborate their stories. And one at a time, we started to interview them in our housing unit office. One interview led to the next, and it was all connecting. It literally led us to the guy that was going to do the cutting of our deputy. This is room 38. This is the room which he stayed. He was pulled out of this room. He was taken to our strip search room. The murder weapon that was going to be used, which was a bunch of razor blades affixed to a handle of a toothbrush, we actually found on the inmate and found extra razor blades inside his cell. It was pretty thought out, pretty methodical, premeditated. The plot basically consisted of 3 names of 3 deputies literally listed down the line 1, 2, and 3. If they couldn't get to number 1, they were going to go to number 2, and so forth and so on. I see a name that, somebody that may have been a shift away from having their neck sliced in an escape attempt. That's hard-hitting stuff. That's gut-wrenching.
Once the deputy was killed, the juveniles were going to make their escape.
When I went home that night, I know we had done our job. We saved a life.
If Gray doesn't stay on top of the weapons and the inmates, somebody may die. In the lockdown unit, Chadwick Thomas's suicidal state seems to have lifted. He's out of his cell for rec, which in lockdown means a chance for a little personal grooming and a call to his family.
What's up?
Back in his cell, Thomas makes a surprising confession. He says he didn't really try to kill himself.
Nah, I wasn't really kill myself. I just acting. So for me being in my room, I couldn't take a shower for 4 days. Then they give me no toothbrush, toothpaste, toilet paper, nothing. So I was like, I got tired of it. What really made me mad was like when the officer came to my door and he gave me a tray. When he left, I was like, sir, I ain't get no bread on my tray. Oh, deal with it. Da-da-da. Okay, that made me mad. So I'm like, okay, I'm finna get around here. I already know what I gotta do. You know what I'm saying? I got the sheet. Made it like a rope and I tied it to the fire extinguisher and put it around my neck. I wasn't gonna jump or nothing, but you know what I'm saying? I stood there acting like I was gonna jump.
Thomas faked a suicide attempt so he'd be moved to a new unit where he'd get better treatment.
Since I've been here so long, I know how to, you might as well say, like, manipulate to get, you know what I'm saying, where I need to be. I'm back in the county.
Thomas is still stuck in lockdown, but he's sounding almost defiant now.
Everybody got a lot of time. We struggling back here, but we making it. You know what I'm saying? But we still strong people. They're locked up right now.
In the women's pod, Amber Tackett is about to get some startling information about her extradition to a Tennessee prison.
Hey, it's Deputy Garcia. Did I talk to you earlier about inmate Tackett, Amber Tackett? You guys had pulled a file for me in regards to some information out of her file. Okay, well, would you like to stay on the phone when I tell her this? Because this doesn't happen very often. Ms. Tackett, Tennessee refuses to come get you. You are going to be released today.
Much to everyone's surprise, inmate Tackett is going home to her family.
If I could hug you, I would.
No hugging. She's crying, so you just gave her an early Christmas present, ma'am, okay? You guys can talk to her at mealtime, okay? At mealtime.
Garcia may have spared inmate Tackett weeks of uncertainty.
Yeah, Mom. Mom. You can come and get me. I don't know what time I'm gonna get out, but I get to come home. Yeah.
By Hillsborough County standards, she completed her program and she is now being released. And we would not have known that if we didn't call records today. Feels good?
Yeah.
That is what we call following through. That's what I hope that I hold a rapport with these females or any other inmate in this jail. That when we say we're going to do something, we finish it and complete it, and it usually turns out good.
For other inmates, their stay at Hillsborough may not end so well. Hillsborough County Jail. Inmate Chris Trott says he's found a new way to beat the system with some highly unusual contraband.
I'm gonna show you the best piece of contraband in the whole jail right now, all right? This is the greatest contraband ever. Nobody's got contraband like this. I'm standalone contraband on this one right here. Check this guy out. This is my buddy, and he just hangs out with me. I'm standalone on this. Everyone thinks I'm crazy for having it. They're like, man, you're gonna get in trouble. Kind of reminds me like a dinosaur. I like him. He's just hanging out.
Later, Trott even sneaks his lizard out to the rec area for some exercise.
I hope I don't get a new charge like animal cruelty or something. That'd be my luck. What his name? Rasta. Rasta. You see any big ants anywhere, man?
A pet lizard may be harmless, but Trot's flagrant rule breaking may be his ticket right into solitary confinement and an even longer prison sentence. Thursday, 6 a.m. Deputy Gray is ready for the big crackdown on contraband. A preemptive strike to keep the inmates off balance and to uncover drugs and weapons.
It's a sneak attack. It's unscheduled, just to kind of show the inmates that, you know, this could happen at any point, and we'll do a systematic run through of each pod, each housing unit, looking for contraband.
Give everybody a chance to react.
Colonel Privatera, head of Hillsborough, briefs his officers before the shakedown.
Before we moved them from the south end to the north end, we were seeing a lot of homemade weapons. So if you find any contraband, the detention security guys will be here, Gray will be here. If you find something, they'll come and get it. Let's try to handle it as little as possible.
We're getting ready to do a mass shakedown. 10, 12 canines we're going to use today, along with probably 60, 70 personnel.
Surprise is the key, and an overwhelming show of force. Members of the tech squad make their way into one of the lockdown pods, where some of the most difficult and dangerous inmates are kept, including accused cop killer Dante Morris. They will bring each inmate out separately as his cell is searched. Chadwick Thomas watches the shakedown unfold from his cell. Across the way, one inmate uses the shakedown to vent his anger.
This is bullshit, okay? I didn't ask to be over here. I don't want to be in protective custody.
Hey, lower your voice, man.
I don't what? What are you going to do? Put me in the hall? I'm already in the hall.
Now it's Thomas's turn. Deputies search Thomas's cell. It's clean. The officers burst into one of the direct supervision men's pods. The inmates are moved into the rec yard. Among them, Chris Trot. A second-tier cell turns out to be filled with contraband.
So, coffee. Obviously, this stole it from the trustees. Show up in the morning. They're not supposed to have any of this. It's all contraband. Okay, obviously this guy has got some issues following the rules. It's the wristband. They're not supposed to take this off. This is their ID. Picture ID, they gotta have this at all times in the wrist.
Do you see who this is? That's Christopher Trot's identification band that we put on him that you're supposed to have on you at all times. But every so often you'll run into inmates that will literally, you know, soap and water, they weren't put on tight enough and they'll slip it on and off, but completely against facility rules.
This guy had some pad in there. This is obviously giving him water and everything taken care of.
It's not unusual, his history. He crosses the line, but he doesn't cross it enough to where he gets, you know, serious trouble.
Right down the edge of the line.
Yes, he likes to teeter, he likes to walk the line.
That's Christopher Trot.
With all the contraband in his cell, Trot may have crossed the line. Thursday afternoon.
Pay attention to the pipe chases and if you're searching cells underneath the sinks.
Officers have completed searching several units in the jail. When Gray's partner, Deputy Camara, discovers one small yet potentially lethal item. A razor blade.
Just found in cell 3, glued under the desk with toothpaste, which is a common hiding method. If you don't move the desk or look under the desk, this can be affixed to the handle of a toothbrush and used as a slashing weapon.
They're very easy to conceal, and it only takes a little razor to cut somebody's throat or something. So they can be very dangerous. So as you can see today, we've only found one. And out of, 5 or 6 pods that we look through, that's a success.
The entire shakedown yields only the razor blade, a few pills, some homemade alcohol, and some marijuana. But that's a good thing. It tells Deputy Gray that they may be winning the fight against weapons and drugs.
Not a lot of it was found and not a lot in one place, which tells me that the deputies that are working those pods are doing an excellent job in controlling the pod.
Come down and line up, single file.
Inmate Trot didn't have any weapons or drugs, but his cell was crammed with nuisance contraband.
Due to his background and his history, he could face up to probably 15 days, 30 days in lockdown, depending on what they want to do with him. He's had a couple incidences here in the last couple months, all the way up to marijuana, and it might be one of those things where they see fit that he spends a little time in lockdown.
Jail is about rules, and Trot seems incapable of following them.
I lost my upstairs room, my good mattress, my good pillow. Now I got a crappy mattress, crappy pillow, crappy roommate. Life sucks.
Trot will find out soon enough if his habitual rule breaking will mean a tougher prison sentence. Despite his efforts to work the system, Chadwick Thomas is still struggling with solitary confinement, so much so that he yearns for prison.
I'm really ready to go back because I don't want to sit in confinement in the box all day. You only get to come out 3 times a week. So it's only like 3 times you get to use the phone out the week, you know what I'm saying? When you're in prison, there's a lot of other stuff you can do. I can walk around, go to the rec yard, play basketball.
Thomas wants to have his appeal hearing and head straight back to the pen. Prison is easier than jail.
Being institutionalized make it easier, really, you know what I'm saying? You can do the same thing every day, so you get accustomed to doing the same thing. So when somebody breaks the cycle, it's like, it off balance you feel me? Because this is not my regular cycle right here, being in the room, locked up all day, not be able to like move how I want to move, you know what I'm saying? He's breaking my cycle.
Bye. Bye, Amber. Bye. Love you guys.
It's time for Amber Tackett to get processed out.
All right, Miss Amber Tackett. It was very nice to meet you, ma'am.
It was wonderful meeting you, too.
I'm glad everything worked out the way that it did.
Me, too.
Please do your best, Amber.
I will.
This is your golden ticket out of here.
Thank you.
All right?
Bye.
1 Bravo to an available escort. We have a release in the vestibule. 1 Bravo.
I haven't left jail in the whole 8 months other than riding in the van to go to court. It feels good. I feel really good. Can't wait to get home and hug everybody and sit down and eat a real meal.
Sometimes it works out for the best. And it did today. It doesn't always turn out that way.
For Deputy Garcia, it's been a good day. An inmate helped, and no threats. But as the deputies at Hillsborough County Jail know, their lives are always on the line.
Our eyes can't be everywhere, and we can't be everywhere. You can have a bad day. A good day can turn into a bad day really fast.